She begged for bread to save her child, but found herself craving far more from a human's touch. Stay close. The story starts now.
The industrial district of Nethharl had never been a place for beauty or comfort. Beneath the relentless glare of the twin suns of Proxima Vega, everything seemed bleached, blistered, or broken. The pavement cracked in jagged spider webs from decades of heat and strain. The air shimmered with toxic haze from the Tiberium smelters, and the ever-present dust coated every surface with a grayish film. To most who passed through it was a wasteland, a necessary evil tolerated only because of the mineral wealth beneath its scorched crust. For Adam Hawke, it was his place of work, his temporary cage, and his chance to carve out a future for someone else, even if it meant sacrificing his own peace. Adam leaned against the grimy wall of the food dispensary, the taste of synthetic protein paste clinging stubbornly to his tongue. His half-finished sandwich sagged in his hand, gray fillings, squeezed between slices of faux bread that tried and failed to mimic the real thing. He chewed with the weariness of a man who had no better option. After 6 months in the Tiberium mines, his body had grown harder, leaner, every muscle sculpted by back-breaking shifts. But his appetite had never managed to adapt to Voxian rations. The company called it nutrient-optimized, yet to Adam it tasted like recycled cardboard blended with ash. His 30-minute break was already half gone. He knew he should keep eating, energy was survival in the shafts, but the monotony of the meal made him sigh. Sweat stung his eyes, and he wiped it away with a calloused hand, only smearing another streak of grime across his face. At 6'4", with shoulders broad as a cargo loader, Adam was an imposing figure, even among the multi-species workforce. The other miners had nicknamed him the Wall, both for his size and for his unyielding work ethic. He didn't complain, didn't falter, and rarely allowed anyone close enough to glimpse the softer parts of him, the parts that still remembered the sound of laughter back on Earth, the warmth of his little sister's smile, and the promise he had made to her. 18 months. That was the length of his contract. Triple hazard pay. Enough to send her to a proper school away from the dirt farms and fading towns of a planet that was beginning to feel more like history than home. That was why Adam was here, choking down nutrient paste in the shadow of the mines. For her future, he could endure anything. He lifted the sandwich for another reluctant bite when motion at the edge of his vision pulled him from his thoughts. At first, it looked like a mirage. The heat made everything shimmer ghost-like. But as the figure drew closer, details resolved. A woman, not human. Her light blue skin was dulled by a layer of street dust, her white hair hanging limp, as though it had forgotten what it meant to shine. She moved slowly, hesitantly, as though every step demanded more than she could spare. Adam straightened, instinctively alert. The miners' district wasn't safe for the desperate, especially for the Lumidian natives, whose people had already been pushed to the margins by the arrival of human and alien corporations. Yet here she was, thin arms wrapped around a child clinging to her side. The girl was small, her pale blue skin several shades lighter than her mother's hair, cropped short and tangled with grime. Wide eyes followed the sandwich in Adam's hand with a hunger so raw, it felt like a physical force pressing into his chest. When the woman stopped a respectful distance away, she kept her gaze lowered. Her voice, accented but clear, broke with quiet desperation. "Excuse me, sir," she said, almost a whisper. "Please, may I have the rest of your sandwich? For my child." "We have not eaten in 3 days." Adam froze his food, suspended halfway to his mouth. The words carved through him more sharply than any shard of Tiberium. He looked at the child again, tiny fingers gripping her mother's tattered dress so tightly the knuckles had turned white. Her lips were cracked, her skin carried the sickly pallor of malnutrition. 3 days, his voice, usually rough and deep, softened in disbelief. The woman nodded, still not daring to meet his eyes. I would not ask, but for my daughter." Adam glanced at the pathetic gray mass of protein between his hands. He had cursed its taste moments ago, but now it looked like salvation. He could have handed it over, ended the moment, let it be nothing more than an act of charity. But something rooted him to the ground, something that stirred in his gut and told him this was not just a fleeting encounter. "Wait here," he said firmly, standing to his full height. The woman flinched at his sudden movement, fear flashing across her luminous eyes when she risked a glance upward. Adam had seen that look before from non-humans, confronted with his towering frame. To them, he was a brute, another human miner conditioned for strength and endurance. He ignored the sting of that perception and strode into the dispensary. 90 seconds later, he returned carrying not just a half-eaten sandwich, but two fresh ones, a container of nutrient-enriched milk and a packet of vitamin supplements. He held them out without flourish. These are human rations. Better than the Voxian garbage. The supplements will help with malnutrition. For the first time, the woman looked up fully. Her eyes were extraordinary, large, luminous, shifting between violet and indigo in the sunlight. They widened with shock at the sight of the food. Her lips parted as if to protest. We cannot possibly. You can. Adam interrupted his tone, brooking no argument. And you will. The kid needs it. Something passed between them, then something unspoken but undeniable. Gratitude, yes, but also recognition. A fragile thread connecting two souls across species, circumstance, and despair. The child reached eagerly, but the mother caught her small hand, whispering, "Slowly, little star, slowly." She unwrapped one sandwich and broke a piece for her daughter, who devoured it with the fierce urgency of survival. Adam watched a heaviness settling in his chest. His wrist display beeped, reminding him his break was almost over. "I have to get back to the shaft," he said reluctantly. Then, almost against his own will, he asked, "Will you be all right?" A sad smile touched her lips, thin but determined. "We always are somehow." He turned to go, but her voice stopped him. "Mr. Hawk." He looked back, one eyebrow raised. "Why would you help strangers?" she asked softly. "Especially, non-humans." Adam shrugged those massive shoulders. "Where I come from, hungry people get fed. Doesn't matter what color their skin is or how many fingers they've got. Simple as that." For a long moment, silence hung between them, filled only by the distant clang of machinery and the low hum of the district. Then Adam walked away, back toward the mines, the weight of her luminous gaze lingering in his mind. He didn't know why the image of the mother and child clung to him so stubbornly, but he couldn't shake the strange feeling that something had just shifted in the universe. It was a small act, a sandwich. Yet in that moment under the brutal suns of Proxima Vega, Adam Hawk had unknowingly set into motion events that would alter not only his fate, but the fate of two worlds. The following day, Adam Hawk told himself he was only going back to the dispensary for coffee. That was the excuse, at least the thin veil of justification he wrapped around his restless thoughts. In truth, he had been replaying the encounter in his head ever since returning to the mines. Each swing of his pick, each blast of the drill, each rasping breath in the dusty shafts had been haunted by the image of luminous eyes and a child's tiny fingers clutching at her mother's dress. It wasn't like him to dwell. He was a practical man. The mines demanded pragmatism, not sentiment. But when break time came again, Adam found himself moving not toward the miners' barracks or the shade of the machinery hangar, but back to that same cracked corner of the food dispensary. The street looked as it always did, sunlight scorching the pavement, dust swirling in lazy eddies, alien and human workers trudging to and from their shifts. But Adam's eyes scanned for a familiar figure with a strange tension in his chest. He almost convinced himself he'd imagined to her that she and her daughter had been some heat-born hallucination conjured by his own loneliness. Then a voice behind him, soft but steady, spoke. "I hoped you might return." Adam turned, and there she was, Elra. Alone this time. The transformation startled him. Her face was clean, the streaks of dust scrubbed away to reveal delicate features, high cheekbones, a gentle jawline, lips that even when pressed into solemnity carried the echo of grace. Her dress, though still threadbare, had been washed. Her short white hair framed her face in a way that seemed almost purposeful, now not just survival. "Where's your daughter?" Adam asked, glancing quickly around as if expecting to see the small girl clinging to her side again. "With a friend," she answered, noting the flicker of concern in his expression. "A trustworthy one. I wanted to thank you properly. For yesterday." Adam shrugged, trying to disguise the ripple of relief. Anyone would have done the same. Her luminous eyes held his. No, not anyone. There was a weight in her words, a truth he could not deny. Relations between the human colonists and the native Lumidians were strained at best, openly hostile at worst. Most miners would have laughed at her plea, or worse. The fact that Adam hadn't, that he had not only given but offered dignity, meant more than he'd realized. "May I sit?" she asked, gesturing to the small metal table where Adam had been about to rest. He nodded, oddly pleased by her company. They sat across from each other, the din of the district fading as he studied her more closely. There was a fluidity to her movements, an economy born not just of survival, but of elegance. Up close, her features were even more striking, and her eyes, those extraordinary eyes that shifted between indigo and violet, depending on the light, seemed to see further into him than he was comfortable admitting. "You're not from the local settlement," Adam observed after a while. His tone was blunt, but not unkind. Elra's lips curved slightly. "What gave me away?" "Your accent. It's different, more educated." He caught the subtle tightening of her shoulders, the almost imperceptible hesitation. Then she inclined her head in acknowledgement. "Perceptive of you." Adam leaned forward, then elbows on the table. "So what brings a clearly educated woman to this dust ball? Begging for food." For the first time, her composure cracked. Her gaze darted around, checking the nearby tables, the movement of passers-by. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice until it was barely audible. "What if I told you I used to work for Galactic Resources Consolidated?" Adam's brow rose. GRC, the corporate titan that controlled the mines, the company that signed his paychecks and dictated every aspect of his contract. It was the reason he was here sweating and suffocating for 18 months of hazard pay. "I was a xenobiologist," she continued, her tone hushed but urgent. "I studied the effects of tiberium extraction on local ecosystems, and I discovered something they didn't want known." Adam's skepticism sharpened into interest. He'd heard rumors, whispers among the miners, about sickness, about the way the dust seemed to cling too long in their lungs. But nothing concrete, nothing actionable. Elra's eyes flickered with fear as she spoke the next words. "The extraction method they're using isn't just damaging the environment. It's releasing compounds toxic to Lumidian physiology. Slow-acting cumulative toxins that won't show their full effects for years." Adam's jaw tightened. "That's a serious accusation." "I have proof." Her hand moved unconsciously to her side, brushing against the fabric of her dress. He caught the faint glimpse of a scar beneath her collar. "I managed to download data before they terminated my position." Adam's gaze narrowed. "Terminated" seems like the operative word. She nodded grimly. "They stripped me of everything. Credentials, access, housing. Made me a non-person. I've been hiding in the lower districts trying to find a way off-world with my daughter and the data." For a long moment, Adam studied her face. He was a miner, not a politician or a spy. He had no reason to get involved, and yet he saw no deception in her eyes, only fear and determination. "Why tell me this?" he asked finally. "I work for them too." Her answer came swiftly, simply. "Because you're human." Adam frowned. "That's supposed to mean something." "Your kind has a reputation," she said softly, "for unpredictability, for not always following the expected path, and—" She hesitated, her voice dropping further. "Because of how you looked at me yesterday. Not with pity, not with disgust, but with recognition." Something shifted in the air between them. Adam felt it, the subtle charge, the strange intimacy of shared danger. He became acutely aware of her nearness, of the faint scent that clung to her skin, something like cinnamon laced with ozone. "I need help, Adam Hawk," she whispered his name, sounding strangely intimate on her tongue. "And I believe you're someone who might provide it." "What exactly are you asking for?" His tone was rougher than intended, defensive against the pull he felt. "Access to communications equipment, just long enough to transmit my findings to the Galactic Environmental Council. They have authority over GRC. If I can get the data to them, it could stop this." Adam ran a hand through his short, sweat-dampened hair. "That's risky. For both of us." "I know," she admitted. Her voice trembled just slightly. "But thousands of my people will suffer if this continues, including Neri." The mention of her daughter solidified something in Adam. He thought of his own sister, the reason he was breaking his back in this forsaken place. He thought of the children he'd seen in the settlements, their wide eyes clouded by hunger. He thought of the men coughing in the mines, dismissing it as dust. He recognized the story, the powerful few profiting at the expense of the vulnerable many. It was an old story, one he'd seen repeat across colonies, and it always gnawed at him. "I have access to a comm terminal," he said, finally, his voice low. "Engineering section, low security. We could try tonight after third shift." Relief washed over her features so suddenly, so raw, that Adam felt his chest tighten. Gratitude, yes, but also something deeper. She reached across the table and placed her hand on his. Her skin was cooler than his, but the touch sent an unexpected current through him. "Thank you," she whispered. Her hand lingered longer than necessary. When she finally withdrew, Adam felt the absence keenly. He stood abruptly, as if to shake off the weight of the moment. "Meet me at the south maintenance entrance. 2200 hours, less monitored." She rose as well, stepping close enough that her voice was only for him. "You're taking a great risk for someone you barely know." Adam looked down at her, suddenly aware of how perfectly she fit against him. "Maybe I'm just living up to that unpredictable reputation." Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile that sent heat coursing through him. "Perhaps that's what I'm counting on." As she walked away, Adam's gaze followed, unwilling to admit, even to himself, that he was already looking forward to 2200. The south maintenance entrance was a place few workers noticed, tucked between stacks of abandoned machinery and half-collapsed storage crates. By 2200 hours, the twin suns of Proxima Vega had dipped low, casting the industrial sprawl of Neth Harl in bruised shades of red and purple. Shadows stretched long across the cracked pavement, broken only by the flicker of malfunctioning lamps and the hiss of venting steam. It was the kind of place where secrets could slip unnoticed, where the sound of footsteps could vanish into the groan of distant machinery. Adam arrived early, his heart drumming with a rhythm he told himself was just adrenaline. The truth was harder to admit. He had thought of Elra all day, her luminous eyes, her unwavering courage in the face of exile, the way she had said his name, as if it meant something more. He checked the access panel again, fingers brushing the magnetic card clipped to his belt. He'd swiped into the engineering wing hundreds of times before. Tonight, the routine felt like stepping off a cliff. He coughed, the metallic tang of the mine still clinging to his throat, and muttered, "Dust." But Elra's warning echoed in his mind, toxins that built slowly and visibly. He shook it off. There was no room for hesitation. At precisely 2200, she appeared. A dark cloak concealed her features, the hood drawn low, but when she lifted her head, the light caught her white hair, turning it into a faint halo. For a moment, Adam forgot the danger struck by the quiet grace of her arrival. "You came," she whispered, relief evident in her voice. "Said I would, didn't I?" He swiped his card and the heavy door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. "Stay close. Security's light this time of night, but not non-existent." They slipped into the service corridors, dimly lit by strips of emergency red. The walls hummed with the thrum of generators, the scent of oil and hot metal thick in the air. Adam led with steady strides, every corner and shortcut memorized from months of work. Elra followed silently, her steps measured her presence, a quiet shadow just behind his shoulder. "How are you feeling?" she asked suddenly, as they waited for the lift that would take them 3 levels up. Adam glanced at her, surprised. "Fine. Why?" "Your breathing is uneven. You've coughed 4 times since we met." He hadn't realized she'd been counting. He smirked, trying to brush it off. "Just dust from the mines." Her expression darkened. Without asking, she placed her cool palm against his forehead. The touch was clinical, but the shiver that shot down his spine had nothing to do with medicine. "Your temperature is elevated," she murmured. "How long have you been experiencing symptoms?" "It's nothing," he insisted, just as the lift doors opened. Inside the cramped space, their proximity was unavoidable. She stood closer than necessary, her eyes searching his face with intensity. "The toxins affect humans too," she said softly. "Differently. Respiratory issues first, then neurological. You need treatment." Adam looked away, jaw tightening. He wasn't ready to admit how the cough lingered, how exhaustion seemed to creep faster each shift. "Let's just get this done." The lift stopped at level 3. They stepped into the engineering section, mostly automated at night, the skeleton crew preoccupied with routine system checks. The air here was cooler, cleaner, but Adam's chest still felt heavy. He motioned for Elra to follow. "Communications hub is this way." They were halfway there when alarms blared, bathing the corridor in pulsing red. "Attention all personnel," a mechanical voice droned. "Security breach detected in Sector 7. Non-essential staff clear the area immediately." "That's the opposite direction," Adam muttered. "Not us, but security will be jumpy." They quickened their pace, but as they turned the final corner, voices echoed ahead. Guards, right outside the hub. Adam cursed under his breath. He scanned the hall, then pulled Elra into a narrow maintenance closet, shutting the door behind them. The space was barely large enough for one person, with two, their bodies pressed together, breath mingling in the darkness. Adam's broad frame shielded her instinctively. His arm braced against the wall above her head. Her heart pounded against his chest, a rhythm that matched his own racing pulse. "Security sweep," he breathed into her ear. "They'll check the corridors, then move on." She nodded, her face inches from his. In the dim sliver of light through the door seams, her luminous eyes shimmered like liquid stars. The air grew thick with heat and closeness, every second stretching taut. Adam became acutely aware of every point of contact, her slender curves against his hardened frame, her cool breath brushing his neck, the delicate weight of her hands resting lightly against his chest. "Your heart is racing," she whispered, her fingers tracing the outline of his sternum. Can't imagine why he muttered, a wry edge to his voice. Humor was his shield, but it did little to dull the tension sparking between them. "Lumidians have a saying," she murmured, her gaze locking onto his. "Danger awakens our truest desires." "Humans have similar sayings." Adam replied, his voice rough, his hand moving almost unconsciously to her waist. Her breath caught. "And what are your truest desires, Adam Haw?" He hesitated, lips a breath away from hers, giving her a chance to retreat. She didn't. Instead, she bridged the final distance. The kiss began tentative, a question unspoken. Then it deepened, fierce and hungry, as though both had been holding back something inevitable. Her lips were cooler than a human's, but the sensation was intoxicating. Adam tangled a hand in her silken hair, pulling her closer, while Elra pressed against him with surprising strength. For a heartbeat, cultural differences, biological divides, and the shadow of danger melted away. There was only the primal truth of two beings drawn together, the universe narrowing to the taste of her lips and the thunder of their hearts. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Elra looked up at him with wonder. "Your warmth," she whispered, voice trembling. "It's like nothing I've ever known." Adam brushed a thumb along the line of her jaw, awed by the contrast of her blue skin against his tanned hand. "And you're like no one I've ever met." The moment shattered when a violent cough racked his chest. He doubled over slightly, the spasm tearing at his lungs until he tasted iron. Elra steadied him, her concern sharp. "It's getting worse," she said quietly. "We must move quickly." Adam forced himself upright, nodding. The danger hadn't vanished. It had only sharpened. They weren't just rebels in hiding. They were fugitives on the edge of discovery, carrying the truth of a conspiracy that could shatter worlds. He pressed his ear to the door, listening as the footsteps of the guards faded. "The sweep's moving on. We need to go now." Elra caught his hand before he opened the door. Her cool fingers laced through his, the grip both fierce and tender. "Whatever happens," she whispered, eyes luminous in the dark, "I'm grateful our paths crossed." Adam squeezed her hand back, the weight of her words settling deep. He nodded once, and together they slipped back into the corridor, the mission far from over. But the bond between them, fragile yet unyielding, had already been forged in the crucible of danger. The communications hub loomed at the end of the corridor, a heavy security door, flanked by glowing panels and humming conduits. Adam had walked past it dozens of times during routine shifts in the engineering sector, never imagining he'd one day be about to break into it. To most miners, it was just another forbidden door, part of the machinery that kept the corporate lifeline to the stars intact. Tonight, it was the key to the future. He glanced at Elra. Her hood was down now, her luminous eyes steady despite the danger. She held the small data chip close to her chest like a lifeline. Adam could see the tension in the lines of her body, but there was no hesitation. She was ready. "You're sure about this?" he asked quietly, keeping his voice low. Her gaze flicked to him, resolute. "If we don't send this data, thousands, tens of thousands of my people will die. And not just Lumidians, humans too. The toxins don't discriminate forever." Adam nodded grimly, swiping his access card. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. They slipped inside. The hub was a sterile chamber lit by cold white light. Screens lined the walls, scrolling streams of data in unreadable corporate shorthand. A central terminal dominated the room, its sleek black surface alive with pulsing icons. The air hummed with quiet power, the sound of secrets waiting to be unburdened. Adam moved quickly, his large hands surprisingly deft on the keyboard. Months of watching engineers cut corners and bypass protocols had taught him tricks of his own. He navigated authentication screens, inserted override codes, and muttered under his breath as he bypassed each layer of security. "You've done this before," Elra murmured, a note of surprise in her voice. Adam smirked. "Let's just say boredom makes a man learn things." He glanced at her. 5 minutes, maybe less, before the system flags us. She slid the chip into the terminal's port and began the upload. For a moment, only silence filled the room as lines of encrypted data flowed across the screens. Then Elra spoke, her voice low but urgent. "This contains everything. Chemical analyses, internal memos, projected casualty rates. It's worse than I initially told you." Adam leaned over her shoulder, scanning the documents as they flashed past. His breath caught when he saw one marked eyes only: Director Clearance. The memo read, "Project Harvester continues to exceed expectations. Test subjects show 62% increased susceptibility to behavioral modification after 3 months of exposure. Lumidian subjects exhibit more rapid deterioration, but human subjects demonstrate superior retention of combat capabilities under influence. Recommend proceeding to Phase 2 with selected military contractors." Adam's blood ran cold. He whispered the words aloud. "This isn't mining. It's weapons development." Elra's expression hardened, violet eyes burning. "The Tiberium is valuable, yes, but the extraction is also the perfect cover. The compounds they release aren't accidents, they're controlled. They're poisoning entire populations just to refine their weapon." Adam staggered back a step, his chest tightening with another cough. He pressed a fist to his mouth, but when it passed, there was a smear of red on his knuckles. Elra's face drained of color. "Adam?" He wiped it on his jumpsuit, shrugging. "Just dust." "No," she said sharply, stepping toward him. "It's already in you. Humans are affected differently, but I've seen the signs: respiratory strain, neurological shifts. They're using all of us, your people too." Adam swore under his breath. He'd suspected something was wrong with the miners, but not this. Not weaponization. His anger surged, burning hotter than his fever. "Then we expose them," he growled, slamming a hand against the console. "Not just to your council, everyone." His broad fingers flew across the terminal, adding recipients to the transmission. Earth Colonial Authority, the Galactic Environmental Council, Lumidian High Command. He even inserted the Earth Colonial Defense Fleet frequency. "Adam, that..." "Damn right it is," he snapped. "This isn't just an environmental crime. This is an act of war. They've been using us as guinea pigs." A progress bar on the screen crept upward. Suddenly, alarms blared. The room flooded with crimson light. "Security breach detected. Communications hub compromised. All personnel respond immediately." "They've traced us," Elra gasped. Adam yanked the chip free as the terminal announced transmission complete. He shoved it into her hand. "Time to go." The door burst open a moment later, voices echoing in the corridor. Adam grabbed Elra's hand and pulled her toward the maintenance shaft. The narrow ladder barely accommodated his broad frame, but adrenaline pushed him downward 3 levels at a time. Elra followed, close, her cloak trailing like a shadow. "Where are we going?" "Loading docks. We can steal a transport." They hit the bottom hard. Adam stumbled, coughing violently, his body shuddering. Elra caught him, her slender arms stronger than they looked. "You're burning up," she whispered, pressing her cool hand to his brow. "The toxin is accelerating." Adam's knees nearly buckled, but he forced himself upright. "We still need to get your daughter. Then we leave this rock." Her lips trembled. At the mention of Neri, her eyes softened with fierce determination. "You'd risk yourself for us." Adam managed a weak smile. "Hell yes. I'm already invested in keeping you alive at this point." Something flickered in her gaze. Fear, gratitude, and something deeper. She stepped closer, resting her hand on his chest. "Among my people," she said softly, "life-threatening situations are considered appropriate moments for deepening bonds. The proximity to death heightens the appreciation of life. Adam arched a brow, even as another cough racked him. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Her lips curved in the faintest smile. Lumidians believe that sharing intimacy in moments like these creates a powerful connection, one that strengthens both souls. Adam laughed despite himself, then winced as pain shot through his lungs. Convenient philosophy. Perhaps, she whispered, her fingers tracing idle patterns across his chest. The blare of alarms drew closer, snapping them both back to reality. Adam pushed off the wall, shaking his head. We'll discuss philosophy later. Right now we move. But before he could take another step, she pressed a small vial into his palm. This is my last dose, she said firmly. An enzyme that breaks down the neurotoxins. Use it when the symptoms become unbearable. Adam stared at her, realizing what she was giving up, her final safeguard, Elra. She silenced him with a sudden kiss, brief, but filled with fire. When she pulled away, her eyes held a warmth that transcended fear. Later, she promised, when we're safe. Adam slipped the vial into his pocket, his throat burning with more than just toxins. He nodded once, then led her down the corridor, their footsteps echoing into the unknown. Behind them, the alarms roared. Ahead, the shadows of the loading dock stretched wide, filled with danger, betrayal, and the faint hope of escape. The maintenance tunnel spat Adam and Elra out into a service corridor that stank of coolant and chemical waste. Sirens still blared in the distance, echoing through the metal skeleton of the facility. Adam's chest heaved as he leaned against the wall, fighting down another cough. His throat was raw, his breath ragged. The vial she'd given him pressed against his thigh in his pocket, a silent reminder of how close he was to collapse. We need to reach the settlement, he rasped. Neri first. Then we run. Elra's eyes glistened with both fear and determination. The Voxians will lock down every district once they realize what we've done. If Neri is still with the children's group, they'll be the first targets. That truth burned sharper than any toxin. Adam had seen the way corporations treated non-essentials during crisis protocols, collateral, expendable test subjects. He wasn't about to let a little girl, her little girl, become another casualty. They moved quickly through the service alleys. Adam's sense of direction honed from months of navigating the underbelly of the colony. Every corner brought fresh danger. Security drones buzzed overhead, scanning with harsh beams. Twice they ducked into alcoves, Elra's hand gripping his arm as they held their breath until the machines passed. When they reached the outer perimeter of the Lumidian settlement, Adam stopped short. Armed guards lined the entrances, their rifles glinting under the harsh floodlights. Scanners swept every passerby, and anyone who faltered or failed was pulled aside, roughly shoved toward containment units. They're screening for resistance, Elra whispered, her hand tightening on his sleeve. Anyone who doesn't show signs of toxin influence, they'll detain them, study them. Adam scanned the perimeter, his soldier's instincts awakening. His time in Earth's militia hadn't been long, but it had left him with the ingrained reflex to map weaknesses to find gaps. His eyes landed on a half-hidden service hatch near the waste recycling depot. A maintenance tunnel. There, he said, pointing. Elra followed his gaze, nodding. It bypasses the checkpoints, but Adam, he knew what she was about to say. He could feel the fever burning hotter, his legs unsteady. Nary first, he cut her off, forcing strength into his voice. Then me. She didn't argue. That alone told him how bad he looked. They slipped through the hatch, crawling along a damp tunnel reeking of chemicals. The narrow space forced them close, Elra supporting him whenever his balance wavered. By the time they emerged near the central plaza, Adam's shirt was plastered with sweat, his chest rattling with each breath. But what he saw beyond the tunnel mouth jolted him back to clarity. The plaza was chaos disguised as order. Lumidian families were corralled into groups, children separated from adults, the visibly ill pushed aside entirely. Security drones hovered overhead, their energy weapons charged. Voxian officers barked commands, their ridged faces impassive as they sorted lives like cargo. Adam's gaze swept the groups of children and froze. There! Elra's gasp matched his own. Neri sat huddled among the sickly young, her once pale blue skin mottled with an unhealthy pallor. Her small frame leaned limply against another child, eyes glazed, movements sluggish. Even from a distance, Adam could see the unnatural blankness in her face, the toxin's cruel touch twisting her mind. Elra surged forward instinctively, but Adam caught her arm. Wait, not yet. Too many eyes. Her body shook with suppressed anguish. She's there, Adam. My daughter is right there. We'll get her, he promised, his voice like stone. But if you rush now, they'll gun us down before we take 3 steps. They circled the plaza's edge, ducking behind abandoned stalls until they reached a small building marked with a faded medical symbol. Adam forced the back door open with brute strength. Inside, the sharp scent of antiseptic clung to the air. A man in a white coat looked up in shock. Human. His hands hovered over a Lumidian patient on a cot. When his eyes met Adam's, they widened. Hawk, he blurted. What the hell are you doing here? Adam blinked. Dr. Harlow. The medic's gaze flicked from Adam to Elra, then back, narrowing at the sight of Adam's heaving chest. Stage 2 exposure, he muttered. How are you still conscious? Temporary enzyme, Elra explained quickly. She straightened her voice, urgent. I am Dr. Elrathalon, xenobiologist. We've uncovered what GRC is truly doing here. We transmitted the evidence, but they're initiating a purge protocol. Harlow's expression hardened. I know. I've been treating minors for months, documenting symptoms. They told us it was dust sickness. But this... He gestured to his patient, a Lumidian coughing blood into a rag. This is deliberate poisoning. My daughter Elra said, stepping closer. Her voice cracked, desperation breaking through. She's outside among the sick children. They'll dispose of them. Please. The doctor's jaw clenched. He moved to a cabinet, pulling out several small vials. I've been developing a counteragent. It won't undo damage already done, but it halts progression and clears the mind. This is all I have left. They confiscated my main supply this morning. He handed 2 syringes to Elra. Adam took one, eyeing the clear liquid. Without hesitation, he plunged it into his arm. The burn was immediate, a searing line through his veins. But then clarity bloomed in his head, pushing back the fog. His chest eased, his lungs loosened. Elra injected herself with steady hands, her jaw set. She looked at Harlow, her voice steadier. We'll need a diversion, something to draw the guards. The settlement's atmospheric processors, Harlow said grimly. If I overload them, they'll spew a harmless but visually dramatic fog. It'll confuse the drones, buy you minutes at most. Minutes are enough, Adam said, his voice stronger now. He turned to Elra, locking eyes. We get nary, then we run. She nodded, tears shimmering but unfallen. Minutes later, the plaza erupted in chaos. Thick prismatic fog poured from vents, swirling in dazzling waves that refracted the harsh floodlights into shifting spectrums. Security drones faltered, their sensors scrambled. Guards shouted into comms, their formations breaking. Now Adam urged, pulling Elra into the haze. They darted between confused guards, Adam's bulk clearing a path as Elra's sharper Lumidian senses guided them through the mist. Her hand gripped his tightly, their steps synchronized by necessity in something deeper. Through the haze, Adam spotted the cluster of sickly children. Elra rushed forward, her voice breaking. Nary little star. It's me, it's Mother. But the girl shrank back, her eyes wide with fear. No, you're not my mother. Mother left me. The nice guards take care of me now. Elra's face crumpled. No, Nary, no. I never left you. I've been fighting. Mommy's gone, the child cried, panic rising. The toxin had twisted her loyalties, poisoning not just her body, but her mind. Elra reached desperately, but Nary flinched, recoiling. Adam dropped to one knee, his massive frame folding gently before the small girl. His voice was calm, deep, steady. Nary, my name's Adam. I'm a friend. Her gaze flicked to him, wary. You're human. That's right. And humans keep their promises. He extended his hand, palm up. I promise your mother never left you. She's been fighting for you every second. Will you trust me? Nary hesitated. Her tiny blue hand trembled. Then slowly she placed it in his. Relief crashed through Adam's chest like a wave. He pulled her gently into his arms, turning so she could see Elra's tear-streaked face. Look, she's here. She never left. Recognition flickered in the child's eyes. Mommy. Elra sobbed, gathering her daughter close, pressing her forehead to Nary's. Yes, little star, I'm here. I'll always be here. But their reunion was cut short by the sound of boots and the whine of charging weapons. The fog parted as a tall Voxian officer strode forward, flanked by guards. His ridged face twisted in something like amusement. "Dr. Harlow," the cold voice drawled, "how disappointing to see you interfering again. And you've found yourself a human ally." Predictable. Krell Harlow spat, stepping out of the haze with a group of miners behind him. They carried tools and makeshift weapons, their faces grim. Not today. Chaos exploded. The miners surged forward, clashing with guards. The fog turned into a battlefield, shouts and the hiss of energy fire mingling. Adam hoisted Neri onto his shoulder, grabbing Elra's hand. "We move," he roared. They ran through the haze, hearts pounding. Around them, oppressed workers rose in defiance, the rebellion sparked not by strategy, but by desperation and rage. For Adam, the only thought was clear: he would get Elra and Neri out alive, no matter the cost. The settlement plaza had become a storm. The miners, human and Lamidian alike, had risen, their fury erupting after months of quiet suffering. Makeshift weapons clanged against corporate rifles. Voices shouted in defiance, and the swirling fog twisted the battlefield into a surreal nightmare of shadows and flashes. Adam barreled through the chaos, Neri clinging to his neck, Elra close at his side. The child's small hands clutched desperately at him, her trust now absolute. Behind them, miners fought for their lives, their rebellion given a form in the face of Krell's command. They burst into a side alley leading toward the loading docks. Adam's boots pounded against metal grates, slick with the condensation, each step a defiance of the toxins still burning in his blood. The counteragent Dr. Harlow had provided gave him clarity, but his lungs still ached, his muscles still trembled. Elra kept pace, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "The purge clock is ticking," she said breathlessly. "Less than 2 hours until they burn everything." "Then we move faster," Adam growled. The docks loomed ahead, a sprawling complex of platforms and mooring stations, where corporate transports waited like hulking beasts. But the sight that met them stopped Adam cold. A squad of security personnel was herding miners, both human and Lamidian, onto one of the transports. Their movements were wrong, too synchronized, too stiff. Their faces were blank eyes vacant. "Advanced exposure," Elra whispered, horror flooding her voice. "They're already implementing behavioral control." As if to confirm, one miner broke formation, clutching his head. "No, something's wrong. I don't want this." A Voxian guard stepped forward, pressing a device to the man's neck. Instantly, the miner straightened, rejoining the line without resistance. Adam's stomach turned. He recognized the man Jarin, a burly worker who had once shared jokes in the shafts. Now his eyes were nothing but glass. "Not if I can help it," Adam muttered, pulling Elra behind a stack of cargo containers. From their cover, he scanned the area. Too many guards, too many drones. A direct fight here was suicide. "We need another way," Elra said, her hand gripping his arm. A ship not locked down, something small. Adam's eyes landed on a maintenance vehicle, sleek, functional, overlooked by the guards focused on their human cargo. That one, he pointed. "I can hotwire it." They waited for a distraction. The miners' uprising provided it soon enough. Explosions echoed from the plaza, shouts carrying across the night. The guards faltered, some rushing to reinforce. Now Adam hissed. They sprinted across the open ground, Neri clinging tightly as Adam worked the hatch of the maintenance craft. His fingers moved quickly, bypassing circuits, forcing ignition. The engine hummed to life, faint but steady. But before they could slip away, the colony-wide announcement blared. Containment breach confirmed. Purge protocol accelerated. Facility-wide atmospheric ignition in 90 minutes. All authorized personnel evacuate immediately. Elra's face went pale. They're going to wipe everything, every settlement, every witness. Classic corporate cleanup. Adam spat. He yanked the controls. The vehicle lurched forward, weaving through the dockyard toward the settlement perimeter. But the Voxians were already tightening their net. Checkpoints sprouted at every exit. Drones buzzed overhead. Guards scanned for toxin resistance, pulling aside anyone who looked too lucid. Adam's military instincts kicked in. He spotted a service tunnel near the waste containers, a narrow path bypassing the main checkpoints. He steered the craft toward it, engine straining. A blast seared past them, grazing the hull. Adam cursed, swerving hard. Drones descended, their weapons spitting streaks of plasma. Adam Elra cried. I see them. His hands gripped the controls like iron. The vehicle shot into the tunnel, scraping against the walls but slipping through. The pursuing drones crashed against the narrow confines, sparks showering the passage. They emerged near the settlement's central plaza only to freeze at the sight before them. Children. A group of Lamidian young sick and listless huddled under drone guard, and among them Neri. Again. Elra gasped. She must have been taken during the chaos. But Adam saw more. The drones weren't just guarding, they were sorting. The sick were marked for disposal. No time, Adam growled. He leapt from the vehicle, Neri still in his arms, Elra close behind. They charged into the plaza. The drones swiveled, targeting. Adam raised a stolen rifle, blasting one from the sky. Elra's quick hands threw a shard of machinery at another, its optics sparking. They reached Neri just as a guard raised his weapon. Adam moved faster than thought, slamming into the Voxy and sending him sprawling. Neri, Elra cried, dropping to her knees. It's me, it's Mother. The girl's glazed eyes flickered with confusion, but then Adam's voice cut through, steady and strong. Remember what I said, little star? Humans keep their promises. Your mother never left you. She fought through hell for you. Neri blinked, then recognition blossomed. Mommy? Elra sobbed, gathering her daughter close. But the reunion was short-lived. Director Krell emerged from the fog like a specter flanked by guards. His ridged face twisted into a sneer. Touching, he drawled, a mother, her child, and a human fool who thinks heroism will save them. Adam stepped forward, rifle raised. Your experiment's over, Krell. The Voxian chuckled darkly. On the contrary, you've proven the hypothesis perfectly. Humans predictable in their misplaced heroics. You'll make excellent case studies. Before he could give the order, Dr. Harlow appeared with a band of miners armed with tools and makeshift weapons. His voice rang clear. Not today, Krell. The docks erupted. Miners surged against guards. Drones buzzed overhead. Energy blasts cut through the fog. Adam seized the moment, grabbing Elra and Neri, pulling them toward the mooring platforms. A small corporate transport, an equipment carrier, sat damaged but intact. That one, Adam shouted. They raced aboard as blaster fire streaked around them. Adam dove into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. The systems were crippled but not dead. He rerouted power cross-wired ignition, sweat dripping into his eyes. Elra strapped Neri into a jump seat, then dropped into the co-pilot's chair. Her cool hand found his strength flowing between them. We do this together. The engines roared. The ship lurched, breaking free of its moorings. But Krell wasn't done. His voice snarled over the comm. Fire on that vessel, bring it down. Heavy blaster fire struck the hull, the ship shuddering violently. Warning lights flashed, shield integrity at 28%. Hull breach imminent. Can this bucket go any faster? Adam growled, yanking the controls. Not at this thrust, Elra set her fingers racing across the console. Main thrusters at 60% capacity. Then we improvise. He swung the ship into the debris field on the edge of the system. Jagged remnants of ancient warships floating like the bones of giants. The Voxian cruisers followed their massive hulls, straining against the tight turns. This is insane, Elra cried, clutching the console as Adam threaded them through gaps barely wider than their wings. That's humanity for you, he shot back with a grin. The Voxian cruiser faltered, unable to match his reckless maneuvers. For a moment, hope flared. Then a smaller interceptor peeled from the cruiser, cutting them off. Weapons charged. Dead in space, Elra whispered. But before the shot could fire, the stars themselves seemed to rip open. A massive Earth colonial defense cruiser dropped out of hyperspace, flanked by fighter squadrons. Weapons fire lanced across the void, tearing into the Voxian ships. This is Captain Hrix of the ECD. Dauntless, a voice boomed over comms. We have your transmission. Stand by for tractor beam. Relief surged through Adam so hard his hands trembled. He turned to Elra, who was clutching Neri, tears streaming down her cheeks. You did it, she whispered. You saved us. Adam's throat tightened. He covered her hand with his own. No, he said softly. We saved each other. The tractor beam locked onto their battered ship, pulling them towards safety. Behind them, the colony burned, consumed by the purge. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also hope, the kind Adam hadn't felt in years. 3 months later, Adam Hawke stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, staring out into the endless velvet sea of stars. Beyond the glass stretched the arteries of galactic civilization, shuttles gliding between docking arms, freighters lumbering toward hyperspace lanes, patrol craft darting like silverfish. The station itself was colossal, a city in orbit, its spires gleaming against the black. Adam leaned against the railing, the reflection of his own scarred face ghosting back at him from the glass. He hardly recognized the man staring back. His skin was still tanned and weathered, but there was a hardness in his eyes now, a fire kindled by battles survived, losses endured, and truths revealed. The cough had gone, the poison purged by Harlow's counteragent, but the memory of blood in his throat lingered. Pensive, a soft voice teased. Adam turned. Elra approached with the grace that still made him forget to breathe. She wore formal Lumidian attire, a flowing dress of silver blue fabric that shimmered like liquid light, its folds draping elegantly around her tall, slender form. Her white hair had grown longer, styled in intricate braids, woven with strands of metallic thread. The transformation was striking, no longer the desperate fugitive begging for scraps, but a woman restored to her dignity, her strength undeniable. A little, Adam admitted, never testified before a galactic council. Her luminous eyes softened, violet and indigo swirling like twin galaxies. She slipped her cool hand into his, the contrast of blue against tan, symbolic of everything they had endured. You'll do fine. The evidence speaks for itself. The evidence. Adam's jaw tightened. The data they had transmitted from the comm hub had detonated across known space like a shockwave. The Voxian conglomerate's mining operation was revealed for what it truly was, a mass poisoning program disguised as industrial necessity. Project Harvester had shaken the foundations of galactic politics. It wasn't just an environmental scandal, it was an atrocity, a crime against humanity and Lumidians alike. The fallout had been immense. Voxian stock plummeted. Allied governments scrambled to distance themselves. Sanctions choked supply lines. And in the council chamber today, Director Krell himself would face trial, his ridged face no longer proud but hollow, diminished. A burst of laughter drew Adam's attention. Neri came skipping up the deck, her small hands clutching a toy shuttle that glowed faintly with holographic projections. The child was transformed, her skin bright and healthy, her eyes alight with mischief. The toxins were gone, her mind restored. Uncle Harlow says they're ready for us, she chirped, her voice clear and strong. Der Harlow himself followed, looking unexpectedly dashing in his crisp medical uniform. He gave Adam a wry smile. The Earth delegation just arrived, including your sister. Adam's heart jolted. His sister. The reason he had come here in the first place. All the backbreaking labor, the endless days in the mines, the endless, tasteless meals, it had all been for her education, her future. And yet fate had taken him on a path far stranger, far more dangerous. I'll see her, madam, said quietly, awe and nervousness mingling. They walked together toward the council chamber, the great hall where a dozen species convened under a vaulted dome of glass and light. Representatives filled the chamber, humans, Lumidians, Valkyrie Tenebrians, and others. The Voxian delegation sat isolated, their once mighty corporate empire reduced to shamed silence. At the center of it all, shackled in restraints that gleamed under the lights, sat Director Krell. His ridged face was impassive, but Adams saw the twitch in his jaw, the only sign that arrogance had curdled into fear. When Adams' name was called, he stepped to the podium. His heart pounded, but when he looked into the crowd, he saw his sister in the Earth delegation. Her smile was proud, her eyes bright with unshed tears. The sight steadied him. He spoke. He told them everything. The suffocating mines, the desperate plea of a mother, the toxins disguised as dust. The moment he realized he was sick too. The revelation of Project Harvester. The rebellion at the docks, the pursuit through the debris field, the desperate escape, the arrival of the Dauntless. Every word carried the weight of lived truth. Every pause echoed with memory, and when he finished, silence fell like a hammer. Finally, the human counselor rose. Mr. Hawk, she said solemnly, your actions represent the highest ideals of humanity. Courage, compassion, determination. You saved countless lives. You reminded us that even the smallest act of shared meal can spark the fire that changes galaxies. She glanced at her fellow counselors, then continued. The Council wishes to extend and offer a position with the newly formed Interspecies Protection Agency dedicated to preventing abuses such as these. Your experience, your instincts, your humanity make you uniquely suited. A ripple of approval swept through the chamber. Adam stood silently for a moment, then spoke. I'll accept, on one condition. The counselor's brows rose. Condition: that Dr. Thalon be offered a similar position. Her expertise, her courage, they were instrumental. I wouldn't be here without her. The counselor smiled faintly. Already arranged, Mr. Hawk. We recognize talent when we see it. Relief eased Adam's chest. He stepped down, joining Elra and Neri again. Elra's eyes glowed with pride. You spoke like a warrior of two peoples, she murmured. Later, as the chamber emptied and justice moved forward, Adam found himself alone with Elra and Neri on the observation deck once more. Stars stretched endlessly before them, infinite possibilities in their glittering expanse. What happens now? Neri asked, her small hand slipping into Adam's. Now Adam said, gently kneeling so his eyes met hers, we make sure what happened to you and your mother never happens to anyone else. Together. Together, she echoed, tilting her head. Adam looked at Elra. Their fingers intertwined, blue and tan, different yet perfectly matched. Together they said in unison. Neri grinned, then scampered off to watch a passing freighter arc past the viewport. Elra leaned against Adam's solid frame, her voice soft. From begging for leftovers to changing the galaxy, she said with quiet wonder. Adam wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her closer. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness, he murmured, lead to the greatest adventures. Their lips met in a kiss that was no longer tentative, no longer stolen in shadows, but open and unafraid. A kiss that bridged worlds, cultures, species. A promise of a future neither could have imagined when they first crossed paths on a dusty street corner beneath the twin suns. And as New Terra Station hummed with the activity of a galaxy reshaping itself, Adam Hawk felt for the first time in his life not just hope, but belonging.